Hey guys, I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. In case you missed it, I just released a new short novella called Village of the Lost. If creepy forests and haunted villages are your thing, then make sure to check it out. It's out now for just 99 cents. That's Village of the Lost, available on Amazon right now. You can find the link on my social media or just type the title into the search bar. This week, we're looking at two instances of some rather unique hauntings. First up, a group of friends visit an area famous for some haunted rocks. Why are they haunted? Well, some things are best left unknown. Find out why in Oibo Rock. It was just after 10 PM one winter night. 3 of us were in the car driving 80 kilometers per hour down the highway with the smell of the ocean wafting towards us. There was a road about a 2-hour drive from where I lived that took you to the Pacific Ocean. If you continued west for a short while along that road, then you would see a pine forest along the coastline. We were heading towards that forest. In particular, the Oibo Rock. Somewhere deep in that forest was a stone they called the Oibo Rock. I didn't know the full details, but apparently it was some cursed black stone. And we were going to see it. It was the goal of our test of courage and supernatural tour. Kay, the one who came up with the idea, slept in the back seat of the car. S drove while I sat in the passenger's seat. It was always us 3 guys. But Kay, the one who had heard the rumours surrounding the stone and was yet to tell us the full story, got car sick and fell asleep before telling us anything, so we weren't really nervous or anything. We'd find out more once we got there. It was always this way. Hey, do you know anything about this Oibo Rock, S? I asked as Kay snored in the back seat. Nope, nothing, he said in a disinterested tone. But if it's something that got Kay so excited, then it's gotta be good. What do you think the Oibo means? I think it means to carry something, right? I don't remember clearly, but I feel like my grandma said something like that a while back. Like, let's carry something. Ah, I get it now. So it's like piling 2 rocks on top of each other, kinda like a snowman. I don't know. I'm sure we'll understand once we get there. We proceeded at a good pace, and we arrived at the pine forest at exactly 11 PM. We woke Kay up and got out of the car. On the other side of the forest was a beach, and opposite that, a small rocky mountain. The rocky surface we could see from the road made it look too steep for a human to climb up on foot. Not that I wanted to, anyway. Pine needles were scattered all over the ground at my feet, and they rustled as the cold night wind blew over them. But pine trees are evergreen, and they still had fresh leaves on their branches. Cold. It was so cold. In the headlights of the car, and with my torch in hand, I made my way towards the forest. S stayed in the car, stuck his right arm out the window, and yawned as though bored. I turned to look beside me, and Kay yawned as well. There were rocks in the forest all over the place, the same size as the car we'd just come in. There were too many to count, and if I hugged one, my fingers would no doubt not be able to reach each other on the other side. Most of them were harsh, black rocks, not like the angular white ones you tend to see near rivers. Hey Kay, which of these is the Oibo Rock? I asked when he was done yawning. All of them. Huh? Like I said, all of them. Every single rock you see here, they're all called Oibo. That wasn't the answer I was expecting, and once again I looked around the area. I wondered if, contrary to what I thought, Oibo was actually a type of rock and not a singular one. Kay climbed over the guardrail, so I followed him into the forest. He stopped by the rock closest to the car. This one had less corners compared to the other rocks and was almost round. It was about 2 meters long and 1 meter wide. It reminded me of a fossilized dinosaur egg I'd seen in the museum once. According to the stories, there should be a handprint or a human figure or something on it. Doesn't look like it's this one. I can't find it, Kay said as he circled the rock. Of course, he hadn't yet told me anything about the rock, so I still had no idea what he was talking about. Hey, so what exactly is this Oibo Rock anyway? You said there was some bloody history related to it. Kay turned to look at me and snickered. Then he suddenly put his torch under his chin so that his nose and cheeks lit up, and then started talking like he was Inagawa Junji. The Oibo in the name actually means to carry something on your back, Kay said. But nobody on Earth would be able to carry a rock like this, right? Don't you think that's weird? Yeah, alright, I don't need to hear anymore. It seemed what S had said was correct, but Kay ignored me and kept talking. Actually, there used to be a really cruel way of executing criminals here long ago. Hey, you can see that mountain over there, right? That sharp, rocky one. Well, they used to tie criminals to these rocks and then roll them over the edge of that mountain. They rolled them over. When I heard that, I was like, hell yeah, this is the one. They tied their arms and legs to the rock, and then their neck, one by one. That way, even if one of the ropes broke, they'd still be tied to the rock. He was no Inagawa Junji, but I still got chills. It's the rock that sinners carry on their back, so that's why they call it the Oibo Rock. The rumors say that each rock contains the emotions of the person it killed. Humans sure are terrifying, huh? Don't you reckon? Then Kay turned off his light and ended the show. Even though he was done, my heart was still beating faster than normal. How stupid. There was no way I could believe that people had been tied to rocks and rolled over a sharp cliff. The idea was childish, ridiculous. But it's just a story, right? I said, and Kay, checking another stone, turned around. He put the torch to the bottom of his chin again. Who knows? I don't know anything about it, but it's recorded in a lot of old literature and documents, so I doubt it's just a story. Having said that, Kay continued further into the forest alone. I stood frozen on the spot, standing next to a rock larger than me that looked like an egg. Could such a thing really have happened? I didn't know, but I did hear that long ago, this area was harder to reach than it was now. The area was isolated from the outside world. If so, then maybe it was true. Maybe they really did tie criminals to rocks and then toss them over the top of the mountain. I looked around once again. Moonlight. The shadows of black rocks everywhere. I was surrounded by countless rocks that may have crushed, strangled, and killed people. A creeping sensation ran down my neck. Suddenly feeling dizzy, I put my hands on the rock to steady myself. It was no good. My thoughts were running away from me. I closed my eyes and tried to force the dizziness to end. At that moment, I sensed someone standing behind me. I thought it might be S, but then something felt wrong. It wasn't just one person. Had Kay come back too? No, Kay had gone in the other direction of the car, and it didn't feel like just 2 or 3 people either. It felt like dozens. A sound. Stifled breathing. Cloth rubbing against cloth. Gravel being stood on. The dizziness continued, yet I slowly opened my eyes and turned around. There were people in front of me. 10, 20, no, more than that. My vision was blurry thanks to the dizziness, but they all wore kimonos, and their faces were wrapped in white cloth like mummies. All I could see were their eyes peeking through the gaps. Some of them held torches, others logs and some ropes. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My mouth felt strange. It seemed I had been gagged. I had no time to wonder when that had happened. I wasn't just gagged. I couldn't move my arms or legs either. I was tied to a rock. But the scariest part of all was when I felt them putting a rope around my neck. What the hell? What the hell? What the hell? I struggled wildly, but the ropes didn't falter. Even the scenery around me was different. I was on top of a mountain. I'd just been inside the pine forest. I could sense people moving around me. It was at that moment that I realized what the people in front of me were planning to do. I was a criminal. A representative of the people with white clothes over their faces stepped forward and said something. I think he was a man. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but I could see his lips moving. Then he bowed to me. That seemed to be a sign, and the others approached me. One of them, holding a thick log, placed it under the rock. Several people then placed their hands on the rock too. "Stop that!" I wanted to say, but couldn't. I struggled and struggled and struggled. Then something came loose with a thud. Vibrations shook through the rock. Slowly, slowly. I looked up at the sky, as though in slow motion. I was on my back. I could see stars. The moon. Come to think of it, tonight was a full moon. Out-of-place thoughts ran through my head. There was a loud sound that seemed to split the air. At the same time, something hit the back of my head. I thought I was going to die. Next thing I knew, I was lying on my back in the pine forest, looking up at the sky with my limbs spread out. I lay there just like that for a long time and took stock of the situation. My breathing was ragged. My heart pounded wildly. My head hurt. I didn't seem to be injured. I was alive. Thank God, I was alive. As I sat up, I realized the loud sound I had heard before was a car horn. It had to be S. I stood up and reached for my torch on the ground. Then I noticed something on the inside of my hand. It was a sticky, dark red liquid. It was on both my hands. Surprised, I shone the torchlight on the rock in front of me. The same dark liquid was on it as well. In 2 places. The same places I'd put my hands to stop the dizziness earlier. I checked my palms again. I wasn't injured. "Hey, are you okay?" I turned around and S jumped over the guardrail and ran towards me. "I was watching from the car and you suddenly fell over. Then you got up and you were staring at the rock. Did something happen?" I silently showed S my hands and then pointed to the handprints on the rock. He touched the liquid with his finger and then sniffed it. "This is blood. Are you hurt?" he said. I shook my head. S thought for a moment and then muttered, "The back of your head. Touch it." I did as he said. Sharp pain shot through me, and when I looked at my hand, this time it had fresh, non-sticky blood. Seemed I'd hurt my head when I passed out, but thankfully it wasn't too bad. That's what it is. Otherwise, that would mean the blood was coming out of the rock. Seemed S was trying to say that the blood was all mine. But I hadn't touched the back of my head before that. I was about to say as much, but then S spoke again. "Where's Kay?" I had forgotten all about him. I was sure he'd gone further into the forest, but he didn't seem to be anywhere nearby. "Hey! Kay!" we called out, but there was no response. S and I looked at each other. We went looking and found him lying face down in the shadow of a rock further in. I thought he was dead. When people talk about being struck down by terror, I guess that's what they mean. I rushed over to him and turned him over to check he was still breathing. He was. He wasn't dead. Seemed he was just unconscious. I let out a sigh of relief and all the energy drained from my body. "Hey, wake up, you idiot," S said, slapping him on the cheek. But he didn't wake up. What happened to him? I had a pretty good idea. I think he experienced the same thing that happened to me. He was treated as a criminal, tied to a rock, and then sent rolling. When S started honking the car horn, it drew us both back. How much had Kay seen? An indescribable fear leached out of me. I shook my head and pretended otherwise. We shook him and kicked him, but still Kay didn't wake up. We had no choice but to carry him like that to the car. I lost rock, scissors, paper, so I put him on my back. An unconscious person really is heavy, huh? "Hey, what you're doing right now is Oibo too, huh?" S muttered on our way back. Yeah, it is, I thought. Kay didn't wake up until we were driving back home. S and I were discussing whether we should take him to the hospital if he didn't wake up by the next morning at the time, so we were surprised when he suddenly woke up. The car shook slightly from left to right. "Oh. Huh? We're in the car, right?" Kay was clearly confused, but I explained to him that S was driving and we were in the car, and then, finally, he calmed down. Then he looked at me and said, "Did you see it?" I nodded. What I saw, what he saw, I knew exactly what he was talking about. "How much did you see?" Kay asked. "I was just about to fall over the cliff." "Ah, I see. That's good. I mean, I saw all of it. Right to the end. It was insane." I had no words. Was he saying that he experienced the entire thing? S looked like he wanted to say something to us, but he remained silent and kept his eyes on the road. What on earth was all that? I muttered to myself. The memories of the rock, or the memories of the criminal, Kay said. Maybe there was something like that for each one. He pulled his legs up to sit cross-legged, and then sighed heavily. You only saw some of it, right? Let me tell you the rest. I realized I could hear myself swallowing. Over and over it rolled, and on the way, my right hand and left leg fell off. Honestly, I wet myself. I'm not talking about here, but in there, you know. Even if he had actually wet himself, it wasn't like I was going to make fun of him for it. I was scared too. I thought I was going to die. In reality, if I had gone over the edge, then the criminal me would have no doubt died as well. But I wasn't expecting what Kay said next. I totally thought I was gonna die, but the guy on the rock, me, we lived. Eh? He was still alive when it was done rolling. Maybe that was good. Maybe the shape of the rock was so that he was still alive, or maybe he was just lucky, but if he'd died, then I don't think I'd be here with you right now. Kay trembled and then let out a long sigh, as though trying to expel that shivering out of his mouth. If he had died, things would have been far worse. It was a strange way of putting it, but I understood just what he wanted to say. That experience felt like the real thing. If there was something that existed between dreams and reality, then that had to have been it. After a long sigh, Kay looked up. I didn't expect much, to be honest, but that place really was dangerous, huh? I nodded deeply. So did Kay. Seriously, that was a great experience, Kay said. For a moment, it seemed like all of the lights in the car went out. I replayed what Kay said over in my head one more time, but it still didn't make any sense. That place sure is a winner. If we spread the rumors even further, that place will be amazing. It's not every day you get to die like that. Something suddenly flashed in the car. I turned and Kay had the torch under his chin again. Man, the world really is strange, huh? Then he laughed happily. Should we go straight to the hospital? S whispered to me. I faintly shook my head no. The hospital this late at night will only make him even happier. After that, I pretended to look out the car window. I wondered what would have happened to Kay if the rock he touched had been a person who died. Would he have never opened his eyes again? The conclusion I came to was that still wouldn't cure him of his stupidity. Another time would come where I would no doubt have to carry him home again. I let out a sigh. It left a small white mark on the window, and then quickly disappeared. In this next story, a young woman moves into a cheap new apartment to escape a stalker, but ends up moving from a human problem to a supernatural one. What exactly is in the house with her? Find out in Incident at My Friend's Haunted House. The only supernatural experience I ever had was at my friend Aiko's house. She was being troubled by a terrible stalker at the time, and sensing that her life was in danger, she finally decided to move. She visited the real estate, explained her problem, and asked if there was a place she could move into either that day or the following day. We do have one, they said, but the place was unbelievable. It was a 2-bedroom apartment close to downtown, built rather recently, had no deposit, available immediately, and cost less than 60,000 yen. Even I could see the look on her face that all of this was far too good to be true. I'll be honest with you, the real estate agent said. Apparently, there had been bloodshed in the house, but nobody died there. Someone once came home to find the place ransacked, and they called the police. Another person left after 6 months because they claimed a woman was in the apartment. And they had tried exorcisms and purification rituals, but nothing seemed to work. Oh, there is no way in hell, I thought, but all Eiko asked was, has there ever been an attempted arson there? Of course not, the agent replied, and so she signed the contract on the spot. It reminded me of a saying I once heard. A messy ghost is better than a human arsonist. She didn't quite move in right away, but Eiko pretty much did a runner in the night and left her old place behind. I think it took about 2 months for the police to finally intervene and deal with her stalker problem. After that, all of us gathered to celebrate Eiko's safety and freedom. On that note, is this place okay? It's not haunted? I asked. She hadn't once said anything about a ghost since moving in, so I was wondering if the real estate had just exaggerated matters. Oh, it is. There's a little girl in the closet, Eiko said frankly. When you entered Eiko's house, there was a room directly opposite the front door, a living room further in, and then one more room near that. The real estate agent said the dangerous room was the one next to the front door. And apparently, that was exactly where the hauntings happened. One day, she got home to find her shoes had been strewn everywhere. Another time, all of her linens were thrown around. When she came out of the toilet one time, she saw a shadow disappear into the haunted room, followed by the sound of the closet closing. And yet another time, she saw a shadow standing on the other side of the frosted glass while she was in the bath. apparently things like this happened at least once a day. Eiko had a weakness for nice clothes, and she had good taste as well, so it was rare for her to throw things out. Even now, she wore clothes she bought 10 years earlier and was still fashionable. And it seemed that Eiko was using that haunted room as her dressing room. She even played with the ghost that lived in there, letting her coordinate Eiko's clothes. She would apparently leave them out for her, head to toe, even going so far as to put what shoes and bags she should wear on the ground as well. If she criticized the ghost for her lame fashion sense, for example, giving her 15 points for the outfit before she left, then she might come home to find the shoes all switched in her dressing room, or some underwear shoved into her bags, or her outfits all switched around. "Well, if you don't like being criticized, then do better," Eiko would tell her. And then the next morning, she'd find a new outfit laid out for her. But it was still bad. Both Beamy and I wanted to see this ghost, so we decided to spend the night at her place. We bought some sake and then went over for the first time since we helped her move. It really was in a great location, and it wasn't the type of apartment a girl in university could usually afford. When we went inside, the atmosphere didn't feel oppressive or bad at all. On the contrary, Eiko liked keeping things clean, so it looked like a model showroom. If you told someone that it was haunted, they would no doubt not believe you. First, we decided to shower, except for Beamy, who was a morning shower person. Eiko said that she'd go into the haunted room to get me some pajamas, so we ended up going in there right away. As soon as she opened the door, I, embarrassingly, fell over on my backside. In the dim room, I saw a human figure hanging and swaying. Just like Eiko said, thinking back on it now, I can't remember a thing. I stared at the figure hanging before me, and even now, I can't remember what she was wearing, what her face or even body shape looked like, nor her skin color. The only thing I do remember was that a human figure was hanging by the neck. Beamy screamed breathlessly, while Eiko was like, "Ah, she's learnt a new trick." Beamy slammed the door shut, and again Eiko was like, "You two are good wearing a t-shirt and shorts, right?" Then she went into the room to get the clothes. "Is she still there? Is she still hanging?" "No, she's gone now." Eiko's guts were on another level. That's the first time I've seen her do anything like a horror movie. I wonder if she's excitable because guests are here. Eiko was the strange one here, not her. And she expected me to take a shower just like that? She just stands on the other side of the door, that's all. I don't think that's a crime, Eiko said. But I was still scared. At any rate, I had Eiko go in first. I still remember that Beamy and I huddled together, refusing to look at the door, as we listened to Kiss together. Thanks to that, I naturally listen to Kiss now whenever I want to get worked up. Eiko stepped out of the bathroom like it was nothing and then pushed me inside. I really didn't wanna, but I quickly got undressed, and when I opened the shower door, I fell backwards again. I think I broke my ass that night, but there was a handprint just above the shower head, around the area where the wall and the roof meet. It looked black. Blood? I was so upset, and by that point already crying. I was terrified. I thought for a moment that maybe Eiko did it on purpose, but she was a clean freak and often said, "A clean house is a clean heart," so I didn't think she'd deliberately dirty her bathroom. It was the ghost's handiwork. I returned to the living room in just a towel. "It's just a pattern on the door," Eiko said. "It was on the wall!" I screamed and dragged her back to the bathroom. Beamy tugged on my bath towel as we went, and I almost ended up naked. "It had to be Eiko, right?" I thought, and I stared at her profile as she looked into the bathroom. Her beautiful face morphed into a Hanya mask. It's honestly terrifying when people who are always so happy get angry. I was more scared of Eiko than I was of the hanging woman or the handprint. I wanted to punch myself in the face for being so scared of ghosts. I discovered I was more scared of an angry Eiko than I was of them. Eiko went over to the haunted room in silence. Beamy and I huddled together when we heard what sounded like a punch. It turned out to be Eiko kicking the closet door. And then Eiko screamed, "Hey, you fat fuck! What the hell do you think you're doing to my house? You're nothing more than a freeloader who doesn't even pay any rent. There's a difference between mischief and harassment, you know? You should be grateful that I let you live here and don't be scaring my guests. You make sure it's gone before I leave. And if it's not, then you're living in the washing machine from here on out. You hear me? Round and round and round you go, all day, every day." Once she was done, Eiko returned to us. "Sorry. Let's go out for another drink," she said with an apologetic look on her face. We couldn't say no to that. "Round and round," Beamy kept muttering over and over, like it was stuck in her head. We went to a nearby bar to take a break, and the fear dissipated. But still, Eiko's metamorphosis into a demon woman was most shocking of all. She'd never once gotten angry at the ghost thus far, and in fact, always smiled when she spoke of her. Why was she so angry? According to Eiko, she was so upset because the mark on the wall would be darker if it was blood. Therefore, it had to actually be dried mud. And if it was mud, then it would clog up the drain when washed away. She had just cleaned the drain the day before, so that was simply unforgivable. As for why she called her fat, well, she claimed the handprint looked fat. The print itself was smaller than her hand, yet the space between the fingers was basically non-existent. Therefore, she was fat. She was so calm about the situation. We had no time to think about it like that. But in the end, could a ghost really clean it off anyway? Eiko said that if she could dirty it, then she could clean it as well. I'd heard lots of ghost stories about things getting messed up or broken, but you never heard about what happened after that. Would that handprint still be there? After some discussion, we returned to Eiko's apartment. She was not looking forward to cleaning the bathroom again. I think we were there for about 2 hours. It was about time for the first trains on the Yamanote line to start, and because it was summer, it was rather bright. Thanks to that, I was no longer scared to return to her apartment. We went straight to the bathroom, and not only was the handprint gone, the entire place was sparkling clean. Even though Eiko had showered before we left, there weren't even any signs of water, like the whole place had been wiped down with a cloth. "See? I told you she could do it," Eiko said cheerfully, and then she went over to the haunted room. "Pranks are fine, but you mustn't harass people. We need to work together to live together, okay?" That's not really the type of thing you would normally say to a ghost. But thanks to Eiko losing her temper, and the sparkling clean bathroom, it was almost like the story of Cinderella, and so that's what we decided to call the ghost. It was past lunchtime when I woke up. I went to take the shower I didn't have the night before, and Eiko brought me some clothes she said I could return later. A red shirt, light blue miniskirt, and brown knee-high socks. On top of that, a denim jacket with a flower pattern and some short denim shorts. Some charming denim on denim. I'm repeating myself, but Eiko really was fashionable. This wasn't the type of combo she'd put together. The knee-highs were something Eiko had worn before spring, so it was a combo that ignored the seasons. I looked at her like, "You really want me to go home wearing this?" This is what Cinderella picked out today. It's like I'm being punished. It's the first time I've seen 2 outfits picked out, so I'm sure it's for both of you. It was so tacky that I couldn't even laugh at it. It just made me want to look away in horror. How annoying. And that was my first supernatural experience. I stayed over at her apartment several times after that, but I only once saw a shadow through the bathroom door, and I once heard knocking when I was in the toilet, but that was it. Cinderella also prepared clothes for me each time I stayed, but her scents never got any better. Sometimes I asked Eiko how Cinderella was going. She opens the door to her room whenever I play the Beatles or Stones, so she seems to like that music, she said. If I play metal or something she doesn't like, she changes it and hides the CDs. I found them in the closet when I was looking for a fluffy towel once. All I ever heard from her were nice, heartwarming stories. And according to Eiko, when she first moved in, she was more scared of the stalker, so she didn't like going out. But being alone in her apartment was also scary. She was mentally exhausted, so when Cinderella showed up, she was actually relieved. There was no shock, and whenever she appeared, she approached her to talk. Eiko was never shocked by her appearance, and she didn't leave like the previous tenants either. When we went to stay the night and reacted so well to her, she got excited and did what she did in the bathroom. When Eiko said it was thanks to that she was able to discipline her, I realized that Cinderella was like a dumb dog to her. Eiko continued to live in that room even after graduation. She stopped mentioning Cinderella after a while, and I forgot all about her. One night, we went out together for the first time in a while, and Eiko mentioned that she was moving. She was planning to move in with her boyfriend, and needed to get rid of some things, so she said I could take some clothes home if I wanted. For the first time in several years, I went to spend the night at Eiko's apartment. I had completely forgotten about Cinderella, so I went into the haunted room without a care in the world. But still, this is such a great location. It's a pity you're leaving, I said. And there she was, sitting in front of the Paulonia chest in the back of the room, with her back to me. And again, all I could remember was that someone was sitting there. I couldn't remember anything else about her. But she was definitely there. It was Cinderella. But when Eiko turned on the light, there was nobody there. Just clothes from the box strewn all over the floor. Is Cinderella still around? Yeah, she's doing good. It wasn't like last time. I wasn't so scared or surprised that I fell over. It was more like, oh hey, that's Cinderella. As I went through the clothes, picking out what I wanted, the messy room started to weigh on my mind. This mess isn't like you, I said. Even if I pack everything up, when I get home from work, it's all like this again, she replied. Eiko was more worried about her moving progress taking so long, while I was more worried about the supernatural aspect of it. This is her handiwork. Maybe she's sad I'm leaving. Isn't that bad? Yeah, at this rate, I'm not gonna have everything packed in time. That wasn't what I was talking about. I saw her sitting in front of a kimono out to dry, so I guess she likes those. They're the only things she doesn't mess with. She was in front of that chest before too, right? I'd give you one, but if you had a kimono in your closet, I don't think you'd find any renters. Someone like you will move in again. Then Cinderella won't be sad, right? Of course, Cinderella didn't reply, but I had no doubt she heard. I had no ability to sense the supernatural, and I laughed at ghost stories, but for some reason, Cinderella was real to me. Even now, I still think so. I packed up the clothes I wanted, took a shower, then went to bed. As usual, Eiko's house was perfectly clean, and Cinderella didn't play any pranks whatsoever. Eiko's strict discipline had done its job. But Cinderella's outfit choice remained, and when I woke up, its destructive force blew away all traces of sleepiness. There was a pastel pink skirt, a navy jacket, and black short boots. It was June. Her taste in fashion was getting worse. First thing I did when I got home was look up the rental information for Eiko's place. I looked for listings a few minutes' walk from the station, and it only took about 2 minutes to find Eiko's apartment. The rent and initial costs were about what you'd expect, and it didn't seem like they were treating it as a haunted listing anymore. Eiko had lived there for about 6 years, so they probably thought that was all over now. But Cinderella was definitely still there. The reason I'm writing all this now is because I spoke to Eiko just recently about Cinderella again, for the first time in years. The month after I spent the night, Eiko let me know that she moved out. I was too scared to ask her what happened to Cinderella, so I didn't say too much about it. We ended up talking about the upcoming Disney movie at the time. The Cinderella in your house was a little chubby, but the one in the movie is beautiful, right? That's probably why she liked the kimonos. She probably couldn't fit in my Western-style clothes. She was in front of the chest that time. I was surprised. She's still in there now. She was still around? No, she actually went with Eiko. Wasn't that dangerous? How did she even know that? Was she okay? As usual, Eiko smiled as I rapid-fired questions at her. After that, Cinderella continued throwing all of her packed clothes around, and she really thought she wasn't going to make it in time. And so, she put one of her kimonos that she didn't think she'd wear anymore in the closet, and said, "If you want this, you can have it. I'm not going to be alone anymore. I'm going to have a child. So, if you suddenly appear, well, it's not going to be good for anyone. If you can keep a considerate distance, as we have thus far, then you can come too." And so, the next day, her clothes were exactly where she left them, and she quickly finished packing. I asked her how she knew that Cinderella joined her, and she said that she put Cinderella's kimono in the top drawer of the chest, and every now and then, that drawer alone was open. It didn't happen often, but because the drawer was fully open, not just a little, she knew it was her. "I'm thinking of having it burned with me when I die," she said. Eiko was beyond my understanding. I thought that if things took a turn for Eiko, then maybe she would be possessed, but her life has been the very picture of happiness. Her life has been smooth sailing, which is rare in this day and age. She's happy with her husband, and her children are adorable. Even the house they bought has no ghostly phenomena whatsoever. Well, except for the room that Eiko uses for her clothes, that is. A massive thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier member, Jojo. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to check out Village of the Lost, available on Amazon right now, and our newly revamped merchandise store at kowabana.store. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.